Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hello and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth. As many of you know, we broadcast live every Monday, 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, PM. And that is out of KGRA Digital Broadcasting in the great state of Utah, although I am not in Utah. I'm in New York. No real formal monologue tonight, except to say that last month's one of the conferences I had the privilege to speak at was the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference, a real legend among UFO-related events in the United States, going strong after 35 years. And a wonderfully run event, a great deal of terrific speakers, an extraordinary crowd from all over the country and beyond. And while there, I had the chance to meet tonight's guest, who I had corresponded with irregularly over the past few years, become increasingly aware of his work. And it was just a perfect time to connect and decide that why not come on the show tonight. So, Terry Lovelace has an undergraduate degree in psychology and a Juris Doctor from Western Michigan University. He served on active duty in the United States Air Force from 1973 to 79. He trained as a medic, EMT, and ambulance driver in the service, and did so for his entire enlistment. He is now a retired lawyer whose private practice was primarily involved in civil litigation and criminal defense. He entered public service as an assistant attorney general for the United States Territory of American Samoa and retired as an assistant attorney general from the state of Vermont in 2012. He is also a best-selling author with one of his books right now, currently, Devil's Den, The Reckoning, #1 bestseller on Amazon in its genre, which is pretty amazing. In 1977, he and a co-worker went to Devil's Den State Park in northwestern Arkansas to photograph wildlife, particularly eagles. While there, they decided to head off-road and find a better vantage point to set themselves up. Instead, they encountered something wholly other. A triangular-shaped UFO, the experience of which was life-changing. Terry's books, Devil's Den, A True Story, and Devil's Den, The Reckoning, the book that is now #1 in its genre on Amazon. See, you don't get this in podcasts, folks, only live radio. Right. His book, Devil's Den, True Story, tells the story of a lifetime interaction with non-human intelligences, among other things. And while Lovelace himself has never had a near-death experience, he has experienced the phenomena vicariously through two very credible individuals. The women, both physicians, were without heartbeat for 4 and 32 minutes, respectively, before being resuscitated. Both returned to this life with enhanced psychic and mediumship abilities, and these things for starters. Their stories are brilliantly realized and told in the book Free Fall, An American Near-Death Experience, which is Terry Lovelace's newest book. He lives in Dallas, Texas, with his wife of 44 years and his family. And Terry Lovelace, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you are in Garland, Texas right now. And may I ask you, just out of abject curiosity, what's the weather like?
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. About 82 degrees, bright sunshine,
Nice.
low humidity. It's nice.
May it continue year round.
Oh,
I like to start at the beginning, literally, with a lot of guests, and you no exception. Where were you born, Terry? And can you tell us a little bit about your early childhood?
sure. I was born in East St. Louis, Illinois, actually. My parents had a home there and a little suburban community, but East St. Louis was on the decline back in the early 1950s. So I was born in East St. Louis, lived there as an infant. But then my folks moved across the river to St. Louis, Missouri. And that's really where I grew up, was St. Louis, Missouri, and South Side in the city.
Any siblings?
Yes, I have two sisters, 176 and 178 years of age, both of whom won't admit to experiences, but admit to seeing lights in the sky, lights through the windows.
Huh.
And there being nights when they couldn't find me in the house and all kinds of other craziness.
As a kid, what did your father actually do as a business person? Am I correct in assuming your mom was full-time mom?
No, she was a cook in a nursing home.
Wow.
And my dad drove a truck. So blue collar background, blue collar work ethic.
In elementary school, any particular interests or dreams as a regulation kid?
No, not that I can particularly think of. Dreams in what regard? In regard to
what you wanted to be when you grew up, which
Oh.
would, for many of us, was a soldier, a fireman, or one other two of possibilities.
My occupation was chosen when I was about age 9, when I was having screaming nightmares, terrible nightmares, and had for a couple of years. And my folks took me to a medical doctor who examined me and said, let's let Dad excuse himself. And the doctor pulled up a chair beside me and said, listen, Terry, I just want you to be well. Can you tell me about these? Because I refused to tell him what I was dreaming about, because I was dreaming about ET and spaceships. And says, I'm your doctor. You can trust me. Dad's out of the room. Be honest with me. What are your dreams about? And I told him. And he summoned my dad right back in and said, well, I think we found the problem. It's too much Space Ghost and too much Lost in Space cartoons on television. And you need to change his television habits.
Wow.
So,
I
was one angry. I was one pissed off little 9-year-old. I got to tell you.
Yeah. How disrespectful to the reality that you knew you were living with.
Yes.
At the same time, intuitively, young people going through this kind of thing usually know that this isn't going to go over well in the adult world if I talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my parents decided that I should watch Three Stooges. So that I was limited to the Three Stooges, and it was about 60 days before Mo, Larry, and Curly had everybody in the house on their last nerve. And my mother comes down, she says, look, let's find something else for you to watch. So they put on Perry Mason.
Oh my God.
And I started watching Perry Mason, and I loved it. Had a little crush on Della Street, and thought the plot
Who didn't?
Incredible. Yeah. And
I love it.
I want to do that for a living. That's what I want to do.
Imagine if you had followed the previous role models, which Stooge do you think you would have emerged most like?
That's hard to say. Probably teaching or medicine.
Were you much of a reader as a kid?
Within a small group of kids, yeah, maybe.
Any favorite books informing your elementary school, junior high school, or high school years? Come to mind?
I can't really say. I can't really think of one that Well, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote was a pretty darn good book.
It was a brilliant book.
It was.
And
I
it
read that in
made
high
for
school.
a powerhouse of a movie. Oh my gosh.
Yes, it did.
How interesting. The power of television to direct young people in the right direction isn't usually discussed, but way to go, Raymond Burr.
Yeah.
Were you much of a movie kid, or it was pretty much what you were watching on television?
No, my folks didn't take us to the movies very often. So it was a rarity to see a movie.
As you were coming toward the end of high school, you're still living with these memories of encounters with non-human intelligences. Can you share with us an early or your earliest memory of this phenomena and how you experienced it?
Sure. My earliest, I believe, was around age 4. I mean, how do you know that you're 4? But, in retrospect, I think I was probably about 4 years old. And I was having nightmares, and I was also having events that I thought were real. And I still to this day believe that they were real. And it was the manifestation, and this sounds a little nuts, I know, of little 3-foot tall monkeys. And I called them the monkey men. And they looked like they were right out of a circus. And at first they were kind of comical. And I'm like, wow, this is weird. I got real circus monkeys in my room. But, I think that speaks to the level of influence that these things have over the human mind.
Yeah.
Because I've got letters from people, hundreds of letters from people who had deer, owls, a Disney character, orbs of light. I think they can fashion themselves to appear most benign to the child.
I think you're probably right. And I wonder sometimes to what degree our own human minds enter into assisting in the process. Namely, I am looking at this thing that the world might term a gray or a variation, and I completely can't handle this. There is no way I can process what I'm seeing. This isn't happening. So I'm seeing a 3 or 4 foot tall white owl or monkey instead, which is ludicrous, but I'm a little better at handling it. Or I think you're absolutely right. To paraphrase the old entry into Outer Limits television, we control the vertical, we control the horizontal.
Very true.
They most certainly affect our thinking. Had you, as a boy, ever tried to explain this specifically to your parents and how seriously you took it, and then at a certain point maybe stopped? Or did you ever remember doing that as a boy?
I do remember trying, and my mother sitting down with me and having a heart-to-heart, Terry, there are monkeys on television. You see them at the zoo, but they're not in your room. That's not happening. That's a dream. That's all in your mind. And
what else could they think?
They thought that I should be involved in more activity so I wouldn't dwell on this kind of stuff. So
it's really heartrending in a way. They're doing the best they can. Nothing in their world has ever given them even the smallest signal that this is something that you might be watching out for. Did you just learn to have it be your secret life and get on with things as far as friendships and maturing and, growing in the world? Or
eventually, yeah. I mean, I think that we all learn to cope. If it's not threatening my life, I think with a little bit of time and we can adjust. And I had a friend that I confided in, my friend Ernie, who was a good friend in grade school.
Good.
And he believed me. He absolutely believed me, which really put a damper on the sleepovers, at my house. But seriously, I think I had one.
No, I absolutely know of cases of sleepovers where it was a night where they got visited and you joined the club, so to say.
Yeah.
No joke. You're coming into the end of high school. Are you service eligible at the time, and do you enlist or you go to law school? Well, obviously you go to university first, but what is the chronology of what happens as you graduate from high school?
Well, I wanted a college education. My parents didn't have the economic wherewithal to send me, and they also didn't have the knowledge about such things. They just didn't have experience. I was the first one in the family to go to college. So I was told by a high school counselor that, yeah, go serve a couple years in the military. They'll give you a free education. So I thought, I'll check that out. So I enlisted for that purpose, to get the GI Bill so that I could fund my education. And law school was on me. That was expensive, but my undergrad was all paid by the Veterans Administration.
It was while you were in the service that you had the Devil's Den experience.
It was. I was in the military from 1973 to 1979. And like you said, I served all of my time on active duty at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is still there, by the way. It's home to the B-2 bombers now.
Where's it located?
It's east of Kansas City. And kind of south of Independence, Missouri.
Got it.
And, back in the 70s, it was in the middle of nowhere. But of course, passage of time, now there's a lot of commerce around it. So
before we go on, can I ask you, were you having visitation experiences? And when I say that, in your earlier experiences, were you taken or visited or both?
I was taken mostly. Yeah. I was visited. You know what's kind of odd, and I have trouble reconciling, is that when this thing first got started, when I was 4 or 5, one of the things that they did was always ask my permission. Now, they didn't last very long, but that, as a matter of fact, one of my nightmares is that I'm back in my bed. I'm 5 years old, and this monkey holds out a paw and says, "Won't you come with us, Terry? We'll take you home. When we're done, we'll have fun."
Wow!
And in my nightmare, I look back at the hand, and it's not a paw. It's 4 long gray fingers, and I just flip out. And I have that same dream repetitively. It's odd. I wish I were more capable of lucid dreaming and having more control.
Don't we all, or don't those of us that wish we had more? While you were in the service, were you having these kinds of experiences?
No. As a matter of fact, from about age 10 on, I had zero. I had a nice hiatus until 1977. Well, we did see something odd in the sky over a missile silo in 1970, 5 or 6.
Completely separate from the experiences you were having and these other intelligences. Did either of your parents ever seem to have an interest in the subject of UFOs, or did it ever come up in conversation? Do you remember a reaction to that as something wholly separate from your own experiences?
My dad was incredibly engrossed in the topic. And it was before the days of Google and the internet, and there weren't a lot of resources. And if there were a news story on about funny lights they saw over Utah or someplace, he would turn the TV up and everybody had to be quiet because he had to hear this.
Interesting.
And I would ask him, I said, "Where do you think they come from?" And he said, "Oh, they're all Russians. That's all just a bunch of stuff from Russia."
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to kind of weave back and forth at this point because we're only about 20 minutes into the show. And rather than, interview you about these two separate stories, you've told the story about Devil's Den to so many crowds and in so many forms. I'd like you to basically do it again for my guests here, our audience, and just share with them, as the person that experienced it, take it any way that you want to go.
Sure,
This is your evening. So we go back now to 1977. You're on furlough. You're taking some time off. You've got a little downtime on base.
Yes. I'm with my friend Toby. Toby and I work together. We work the night shift in the emergency room. And, if anything happens, there's a car accident or a heart attack or a plane in trouble, we're the first responders. So I enjoyed my job. We weren't fighter pilots or anything, but, driving an ambulance 110 miles an hour, when necessary, was pretty fun too. So I enjoyed what I did in the military, and it was helping people. So it was better than being chained to a file cabinet like a lot of people were. So my friend Toby, we were playing hearts one night because, there's nothing to do. There's nobody around. We played hearts in the emergency room. My friend Toby says out of the blue, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And those are his exact words. They're burned into my memory. "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And I'm like, "Camping? What are you, nuts?" I knew he was a city kid from Flint, Michigan. I was a city kid from St. Louis. And I hadn't been camping, and I suspected he'd never been camping. So I was just curious where this came from. And he says, "Well," he says, "this could be a nice form of entertainment for our families on the cheap." We were both newly married, and he had a couple of kids already. But so we were always looking for some way to entertain. We would play cards together, barbecue together. His wife and my wife were both best of friends. So I said, "Well, I'll think about that." And, I thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the more obsessed I became with the idea. And I asked him, I said, "Well, how do we do this?" We were kind of the nerds of the squadron, right? I mean, the average guy would say, "Oh, let's go buy a tent from Walmart and a cooler and head down there." And well, that's what we ended up doing eventually. June 11th, 1977, we packed my 66 Chevy Impala and with sandwiches and a $10 Kmart tent, some marshmallows, of course. What was odd was that from the beginning, the wheels kind of fell off this trip, and that we were both competent guys, and we made an exhaustive list of what we should bring, and half of what we were supposed to bring, we didn't bring. I was an amateur photographer, and you know how amateur photographers are just, ugh. And I bought some filters for my new camera, bought some special film. I left it at home. I left it on my kitchen table.
Oh.
And Peter, we just weren't that inept. That was not us. I don't get that. So we drove down. There was a 6-hour drive, and but we had a tent, we had some blankets, we had a cooler full of stuff. So we had everything we needed to make a fun trip.
Sure.
And we pulled into the park, and my friend Toby says, "We can't stay in a campground." I'm like, "What? Wait a minute. We're not going to stay in a campground." He says, "No, we can't stay in the campground." And I said, "Well, there are hot showers and electricity there. Why don't we stay there?" He says, "Yeah, but think about it." He said, "We're going to have somebody to the right of us, somebody to the left of us." He said, "We might as well be camping in Kmart's parking lot. There would be, children and other undesirables running around all over the place." And he said, "Let's go find our own place. Let's be like Lewis and Clark."
Famous last words.
Oh, man. So we skirted the ranger station, didn't buy a camping permit, and came to a chain across the road with this sternly worded warning, "Keep out, do not enter" sign. No hunting, no camping, no fishing, the whole litany of things you can't do.
If you drop the word "don't," it's kind of an invitation.
It is for a 22-year-old looking to have a break. So we this chain across the road, I thought, well, we got to turn around and find a different way in. And my friend Toby, who's very observant, says, no, just a minute, I got this. He hops out of the car, and the Rangers had taken that chain and looped it around itself with a padlock and made a noose. And they just draped that noose over a post on the opposing side of the road on a nail. And he just picked up the chain and dropped it, and boom, we're in. So we drove in, and we did feel like Lewis and Clark. We were on top of the world. And we went and we came to this plateau. And I have pictures of it. It's on Google Earth. It's easy to find.
It's a beautiful view.
It's a beautiful view. It's just a weird plateau. And, you know, there wasn't, it was covered with grass and wildflowers. There were no trees on top of it. The top of the plateau was level with the tops of the surrounding trees. So really this thing was kind of invisible if you didn't know where to look for it. And just by happenstance, Toby knew which way to turn, and we got there. And we found this place. There's a dirt road that goes up to the top. And, you know, there's still a dirt road to this day that goes up to the top. And someone goes up there and cuts that, I'm told, with a brush hog, which is a tractor towing some kind of large mower deck.
Wow.
And when I was writing my book in 2017, I did some research and found out that Devil's Den really isn't in Devil's Den State Park. It's that chain that was the boundary line between state property and federal property. The place that we trespassed onto is owned by the Bureau of Land Management.
If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah. So
like Fred Bundy.
We went to the top and top of this plateau, set up a camp, and it was a gorgeous place to be. It really was. Wish I'd had my camera. And, you know, we did all the fun stuff you do when you camp because it was all new to us.
Yeah.
And set up camp and kind of move the story along. We're sitting on these air mattresses, and we got a fire between us, and we're just chatting, and I remember making the comment. I said, you know, hey, Tobe, I can see how people would like this. This is pleasant. And he's like, yeah, man, I told you. I knew this would be nice. And then I noticed, and this sounds cliche, but it's true, and that is that there were crickets and tree frogs and all the things that make noise in the night were so loud that we were having trouble carrying our conversation across the fire. And that stopped. And not only did all the noises stop and it went silent, we even lost the breeze that we had. We had a little breeze going on, and it was just dead still.
That's eerie.
And it was eerie, and it unnerved me. I mean, we could hear the fire crackle, but that was it. And I said,
that's all of the collective forest sounds and insect sounds simply stopped at a moment, not gradually. They just stopped.
No, they just stopped. Just stopped. And I asked my friend, you know, like he's going to know, right? But I asked him anyway. I said, Toby, man, is this normal? And he said, yeah, you know, we've been laughing and cutting up. We just quieted them. Don't worry about the bugs. The bugs will be back. And he kidded me and gave me a hard time about being worried about bugs. But it unnerved me. And it was about this time that he asked me, hey, Terry, were those lights there before?
Okay.
And I knew there were no lights visible from the plateau. And I said, what lights? What are you talking about? And he's looking to the west, to his left. And I can't see what he's looking at because his torso is in the way. So I stood up. And there were 3 little stars in a tight triangle sitting just above the horizon. And, you know, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, you know, parking lot or from a train, but they were too far above the horizon to have been anything like that. So I'm thinking maybe, and they seemed to be static, but just stuck right there. And I thought, you know, maybe this thing is headed absolutely toward us. And we can't see the motion because it's headed directly toward us. And when it deviates its path by a degree or 2, then we'll see some motion. And there was none. And while we're watching this thing, the 3 stars started to climb up into the air. And they climbed to, and in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. I had no reference as far as height goes. So I had no idea how high this thing went. It went up as 3 stars facing us. And when it reached what I call a ceiling, it did this. It tipped over. So instead of seeing 3 lights like this, it tipped over and we saw 3 points of light in a line. And it started like a glide plane down in our direction. And
could you see stars within the area that it defined, or was it just black?
oh no, the area between what we saw, those 3 points of light, the area between those 3 points of light was absolutely black, and it blinked out the stars as it went past them. So, and
Continue.
2 people have an experience like this. 2 human beings have an experience like this, and the rational reaction is that you look for validation. It's like, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And what is that thing? And there's some kind of dialogue back and forth to validate the experience.
Or you just are quiet.
And we just sat dead quiet. We didn't say a word. And I'll speed up here because the clock is running, but this thing came in over the tops of the trees, and it dimmed the lights on the points of the triangle. And it's a mystery to me, and I researched, there's nothing in newspapers. How could this thing not be seen in 5 counties? I just don't understand that. So it came to a stop almost right over our heads. We were offset a little, which was good because then we could see the side of the thing.
Is it possible to give any realistic estimate of distance from? May not be. It was X distance if it was Y big, but you have any intuition or thoughts on about?
Yeah, I think I can give a good approximation. This thing was about the size of a Walmart or a medical building. It was big. I mean, it was take a city block on each side, and that's how big it is. It was dead quiet, and it came to a stop, and we're just looking at this thing. And I would estimate that it was 3,000 feet over our heads, about 3,000 feet up. I think that's going to be pretty close. And then we get a little more intimate with it later. But this I mentioned that, there was no discussion between the 2 of us about, hey, what is that thing?
Yeah.
There was just silence. And I really had this odd feeling, more like an observer than a participant in the events.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a strange place. And my friend was likewise positioned, I'm sure. And the next thing he said, there was no talk for quite a while. And he stood up and said, "Show's over. Show's over." And he picked up his air mattress and his blanket and took 10 steps backward and threw it in the tent and fell on top of it and went to sleep. And I thought, yeah.
They're still there while he does this.
Oh, they're still there.
Still there.
We're going to bed with this thing 3,000 feet over our heads. But that feeling of relaxed, almost sedation that we had earlier transitioned. It transitioned from sedation to sleepy. And sleepy is a definite different thing than just being mildly sedated and not. And all I wanted to do was get in the tent and go to bed.
Isn't this interesting and ubiquitous in a lot of cases? And I know in your research, you have come upon them. I was describing just the other day my experience as a kid, sighting that was somewhat life-changing for sure, and my sister's experience of that and being taken, and documented it so many times that at a moment when you are experiencing possibly the wildest, the most exotic, the most memorable, the most portending thing of your life, it's wonder what's on TV tonight, or I am feeling a little bit tired, or I'm kind of hungry right now. It makes no sense whatever. this, I think, is also something that's instilled. Um, it's just so counterintuitive. And yet there you are, a classic case of it. Yeah, I think I'm tired now and I'll go to sleep.
I got so many letters. And anybody who'd like to reach out to me, I try to answer everybody. It's terrylovelace@yahoo.com. No, pardon me. That's the, no, terrylovelace@yahoo.com. That's the right one. I didn't bother to take off I was wearing my combat boots, some jeans, and a t-shirt. I didn't bother to undress at all. I just fell on top of the mattress, and I was out. I was asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow.
Yeah.
And then I woke up sometime later, and I don't know what time it was because Toby and I both wore wind-up mechanical watches, which were kind of state of art for the day, and they were integral to our job as medics. You needed to take someone's pulse or to time different things. So my watch was broken. And mine stopped at 240. Toby stopped at 242.
Wow.
And those watches never worked again. I don't know. So I woke up and I was confused. I'm like, where am I? Oh, yeah, Toby and I are camping. And then there are these incredibly bright flashes of white and yellow light coming in from through the canvas of the tent. And when they come in for a millisecond, it lights up the whole inside of the tent like crazy. And I'm thinking, what I did, I'm trying to think rationally, what could this be? And I thought, maybe a park ranger's truck with those rotating lights on top there to kick us out. That would make sense. But the flashes of light were at odd intervals. They weren't predictable. So I sat up and my combat boots were unlaced almost all the way down. Now, I know I didn't go to bed with them like that. I would not go to bed with them like that. It's a trip hazard. It doesn't make sense. I wouldn't have done that. In the military, they teach you to take care of your feet. So I would have taken them off or I'd have left them laced. But then I was annoyed more so than frightened because it hadn't really sunk in yet that we'd been taken and we'd been undressed and redressed by someone else. So I laced up my boots, tied them, and my friend is on his knees and he's peeking out his flap on his side of the tent to my left. And I'm like, Toby, what is it? What are you seeing? Is it park rangers? And he's like, shh, wants me to be quiet. And I didn't get a good, decent answer out of him. So I looked out of the flap on my tent. And two things, that triangular shaped craft that was 3,000 feet over our heads when we went to sleep had descended. And now it's about 30 feet over the meadows.
Oh my gosh.
30 feet over where we're at. And we are right above one of the apex, one of the points of the triangle. And that's where these lights are. So that's why these lights were so bright.
And now you can see how huge it is as well.
We can. And we could see the side of the thing. And I did a drawing of it, kind of contemporaneous with the event, maybe a month or two later.
Good.
But it's drilled into my memory.
Talk about the surface of this craft.
Yes. It was matte black. It had square windows. And there were, I'm not sure of the depth of this thing. I say 5 stories. I think it could be 5 stories tall. Maybe it was 3 stories tall. I don't want to exaggerate, but
3 stories is tall.
It was big. And it was just like if you drive through a city, an urban area at night, and you see a big office building, you'll see lights on here and there, and the rest are, and that's the way this was. And there was what I called an observation deck. I believe that's still up on terrylovelace.com, if anyone would like to see the image. Terry Lovelace.
Yes, and I hope everybody will visit terrylovelace.com after the show to fill in some of the spaces because we're not working with any pictures tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a drawing of it there. And there was what I called an observation deck that was the entire top of this thing was just like a big, long, frosted pane of glass. And we could see motion behind that glass. But we couldn't make out individuals. We couldn't make out a sharp image. It was just motion. And then the second thing, that's the first thing I saw. The second thing that I saw was 12, maybe 15 of these little guys. Now, there must be lots of grays out there, because whenever I tell my story about the grays that I saw, the grays that I interacted with, I didn't think they were sentient in the way that you and I are. I had the impression maybe they were manufactured beings of some kind.
Agreed.
And that was my impression. They were all identical, and they were all task-oriented. I mean, you didn't see there weren't four of them hanging out, having a smoke break or something. They were all doing something.
And at this very moment, are you still, and is Toby still, to the best of your knowledge, in a state of, this is interesting, and I'm not freaking out? And
we're in a state of fear, just absolute through the roof fear. I didn't recognize them as being grays at first. I'm like, Toby, man, what the hell are these kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? And that's what he said. Look at them, Terry. I don't think they're human beings.
Yeah. And
I looked, and he's right. They weren't human beings. They were just very typical grays.
Let me ask you, either by intuition or by exchange of information, did you have any feeling whatsoever that Toby may have been an experiencer, or this was all 110% new to him? And
I'm convinced that Toby was an experiencer, and I'll tell you why. His plans were to go to U of M, University of Michigan, and study physics, and then do graduate work in cosmology. He wanted to be an astrologer, cosmologist. He was just absolutely, anything in the space was his thing. And, warm nights in the emergency room, we'd sit out on lawn chairs, so we'd watch the sky. And he could tell me when and this was the days before internet, he could tell me when a satellite would come over within a minute or two.
Wow.
We'd say hi to the Russians. Yeah, and they'd go past. So, and we never got to touch on that topic. We never got to touch on that topic, and that's such a shame. But my intuition tells me, that he was every bit as much of an experiencer as I am.
So then what happened?
We're watching these little guys walk around the meadow, and they're paired up in like twos and threes. And remember that this ship thing is only about 30 feet off the ground, about 3 stories. And a light came on underneath this thing in the center. And it was a white light. And when I say that, it was a visible light. It was very much like a high-power searchlight cuts through fog, and you see a column of light. This was a column of visible light. And it just clicked on like somebody hit a switch. And as soon as that clicked on, all of these little guys stopped and turned and walked toward the light. They weren't running. They just made their way over to it. And as we watched, they went in pairs and in threes. 2 of them would step into the light, and they would pixelate out, very much like the old Star Trek thing.
Oh, my goodness.
And then 3 would step in, and then they would pixelate out. And we watched until the last 2 pixelated out. And at this point, it still hasn't dawned on us that they're long done with us, that we had been taken. So we're just terrified and afraid to cough or sneeze or do something to draw attention to us. Yeah. But when the last 2 little guys were gone, that light turned off, again, like hitting a switch. And the lights on the points of the triangle dimmed a little bit. And there was an occasional flash of yellow or orange. That stopped. The lights were all white at this point. And it lifted off. And it just went up like a hot air balloon. It didn't, take off like a rocket. It just lifted up and just gently, slowly went up into the air. And the higher it went, the faster it went. And we watched it until it was just 3 points of light and then a single point of light and then gone. And my thought was, I'm not going out of this tent until daylight. I was convinced that I had cover over my head. That little piece of canvas hid me, and I didn't want to make the run to the car. My friend Toby, on the other hand, said, "Look, we need to get out of here." And he convinced me that was the right thing to do. So we darted to my car. We left the tent, the cooler, his backpack, all our stuff. We didn't care.
Really?
We wanted just out of there, please. Wow. That's all we wanted. And I had some concern that he could get us navigate, but he had a flawless sense of direction. And he was able to navigate us out without too much trouble. And we got back to Blacktop and started heading home. And that's when we realized that we were injured. I had probably it felt like the worst sunburn I'd ever had. Oh. And it was everywhere, all over my body. Soles of my feet, everywhere. And
Toby the same.
Toby the same, and we're both dehydrated. We're terribly dehydrated. Yeah. At one point, I asked him, I said, "Look under the seat, see if you can find something to drink." And he's like, "No, there's nothing under there." He looked. And this was 1977 and, Muckwater, Arkansas somewhere, and there's nothing open. So we drove for an hour until it was daybreak. In retrospect, we know that this must have happened to us just about an hour before dawn. So we finally found a little gas station. I pulled in, we got gas, and I drank a 6-pack of orange soda, and he had this gallon jug of grape aid. And whatever they did to me, I think they gave Toby a double dose because he was really in a lot of discomfort. There's no way he could have drove a car. And he was kind of curled up into a ball and, sipping on the grape aid every now and then. And this is another common thing. And it's hard to talk about a little bit, but for some reason, my attitude toward Toby changed. Uh-huh. And this event is what changed it.
Yeah.
And I wanted nothing to do with the guy. And I didn't understand that. So, and I'm sure he felt the same. We were smart enough. We knew that if we went back to the base and said, "Hey, we were taken away by, E.T. and a flying saucer the size of a Walmart," that they'd have sent us to San Antonio for a psych evaluation.
Plus the fact that each one of you, just by your existence from that point on, validates every detail of this. I'm uncomfortable being around the person, the force that shares the knowledge of this with me because I wish it hadn't happened. And
yeah, it's common. I got letters from people that as a family, and nobody wants to talk about it. Yep. As a family, they witnessed this amazing flying saucer. They're on vacation and walking into a hotel room. The event itself lasts about 20 seconds, but they see a nuts and bolts steel thing manufactured somewhere, not at Boeing, and they're watching this, and nobody talked about it. They went in the room, everybody went to bed.
That's right.
Ray Fowler wrote an excellent book called The Allagash Four.
Yes, I am good friends with both.
There's
Jim.
A great author.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that book. And you know why? It had so many commonalities with what Toby and I.
Yeah. Even to the rural, the whole thing of being out in wilderness area.
Yeah. So we agreed that we would not tell anyone about the UFO experience. We would just say we woke up, we felt sick enough to come home. We didn't care about our tent. That's why we left everything there. That was our story.
Did you talk to each other at all, either driving back or in the time after, about what the implications of this were, or just go back to working in the ER, not discussing this and kind of having a more guarded relationship?
Well, things changed. I don't know how they knew, but the Air Force knew that we saw something. And I know that because it was interesting. When we got back to the base, our wives took us to the emergency room. And that was a little awkward because that's where we worked. These were our friends. We knew everyone there.
Of course.
And we were put in separate treatment rooms. And the base commander, hospital commander, who I knew well, was a good guy, base commander, hospital commander, and some guy in civilian clothes I didn't recognize. So I guess there were three of them. Came in, and the hospital commander did all the talking. And he said, Sergeant Lovelace, you're to have no contact with Sergeant Tobias in any way, shape, or form. You're not to, and just like you would have in a personal protection order, you're not to write to him, contact him through third parties. You're not to give him anything. He's not to give you anything. If you run into one another at the base exchange, you're both to turn around and walk in the opposite direction. And reads off this litany of things. And he says, do you understand me? And I said, yes, sir, I do understand you. I mean, I really didn't understand the reasoning behind it. But I thought, things have changed. I felt like my attitude towards the guy had changed. And that was really hard for me to process.
Yeah.
I would see him one more time, despite the order not to, because we both lived in base housing. We both lived in NCO housing on the base, about 2 blocks from one another. And we were coming home from the grocery store on base. And I asked my wife, I said, swing by Toby's. I just want to run in and tell him goodbye. They cut him orders for Japan at light speed. So he and his wife were packing to go to Japan. And my wife parked the car, and she didn't want me to do this. She said, Terry, don't mess with these people.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anything to do with the guy, but I felt like I owed him a handshake and nice working with you. Wish you well in Japan.
Sure.
I felt like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I ran up to the door, same door I've been through 100 times. I knocked 3 times like I always did, opened the door and said, hey, guys, it's me. And just walked in. And his wife, they were packing. And his wife said, you're not supposed to be here. And I said, I know, I'm not here. I'm just here to tell you guys goodbye. And Toby heard my exchange with his wife. And he walked around the corner, and he came up to me. And we managed a handshake, and it was awkward. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was looking for closure. I didn't get that. And he said, Terry, it really happened, didn't it? And I said, yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind. And he said, but why us? And I just almost lost it. I said, I don't know. And I turned around and I ran out of the house. And there was no peace in that. That wasn't closure at all. That was just anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over human beings.
Yeah. Did you ever see Toby again, or in any contact with him, or anybody say, I saw Toby and...
My wife and his wife were both friends. So they carried on and exchanged a few letters. And then she was back in the States. They separated and then divorced. So, and according to her, Toby was having a great deal of trouble sleeping and was self-medicating, with vodka to go to sleep. And I'm not being critical or judgmental here, because I gotta tell you, I had my own struggles. Yeah. And it's a hard thing to process. It's that epiphany that, we're not the top of the food chain. We're not the smartest guys in the universe.
That's what it comes down to in great part. And our hubris, all of the mythology, legends, what we long to believe about ourselves and humanity, and all of the legends, myths, tales that we embrace or reject. This is where it all comes together, and you no longer have the luxury of intellectually dismissing something like this.
Life's complicated.
It is, and it gets more complicated with events like this. Terry, we're going to take a few minutes break right now, come back with any thoughts that you have, because this story continues in 2 books. My guest is Terry Lovelace. This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth, and we will be back in...
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And we are back with my guest, Terry Lovelace. This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. And we are not quite here on Earth with this account. We are, but we're not. Terry, did the story continue for you after that? And if so, how, regarding this original event from 77? Or did just other events happen and you chronicle them in the second book?
You know, what happened was we were both hospitalized. because we were severely dehydrated. And
were they able to establish what had happened to your skin? That
no, not that, or at least not that they told me. I think we had radiation burns myself, but they wouldn't tell us that. One of the doctors that examined me, I had 4 doctors examining me. I knew very well. I knew him well. He was an ER doc, and he's like, "Terry, what did you do? How did you get sunburned all over? What
on the bottom of your feet?"
I mean, everywhere. He's like, "Were you on a spit like a chicken or something? How did you do this?" And I said, "Doc, I don't know," because I didn't know. But they put us both in separate rooms, and they gave us private rooms, which was kind of unheard of for enlisted guy to be. Normally we would be put in a bed in an open ward, and we were given private rooms. And I think that was all part of keeping us away from one another.
Yes.
And
also keeping down any talk about this, because if you're in a ward, somebody would say, "What happened to you?" and you're off and running.
Yes. Yeah. And on the 3rd night there, I knew I was going to be going home the next day. My night nurse came in and was going to give me an injection.
Oh.
And behind her, these 2 guys came into the room, and they were dressed in blue business suits. And one carried a briefcase, and there was a guy about 50 who was kind of like in charge, and then a younger guy, mid or early 30s. And then they introduced themselves, and they pulled out badges. They were with the Office of OSI, Office of Special Investigations for the Air Force, and showed us their badges. The younger guy was a captain. The older guy was a major. Oh. And the older one spoke up and told the nurse, "If that's going to make him sedated, it's going to have to wait." And she's like, "Well, doctor wants him to have it now." And like, "No, we won't be that long. We want to talk to Sergeant Lovelace with a clear head." And shut the door on your way out. And he was rude to her. And I wondered at the time, what is up with that? And I guess in retrospect, and having been a felony prosecutor for a time, I think the idea was to intimidate me. And boy, did they succeed, because I was scared to death. I had never had any interaction with the police. And I was interrogated. Like, where did you boys go? Park rangers found your little campsite, and they said it looks like you're planning on going back. And I said, "Sir, we have 0 plans of going back." And then he said to me, he says, "You boys got a little marijuana plot growing down there? Is that what this is all about?" And I mean, that's kind of comical now, but I got to tell you, being active duty in 1977, that would have been a dishonorable discharge and a trip to Leavenworth. Had we done that. And then the thought crossed my mind, what if by happenstance somebody is growing marijuana down there? So I'm thoroughly scared. And they kind of finished with this, asking me a bunch of questions about our trip, and I never said anything about the stars, never said anything about funny things in the sky. Cut that out, didn't say that. And he had some semi-leading questions that were kind of danced around that area, but not fully. So then he says, "Well, I think we're about done." He says, "We'll talk to you again, Sergeant Lovelace." And the young guy left the room and shut the door behind it. And then it was just me and this OSI major. And this guy had an accent like, I'm sure you've probably talked to Calvin Parker. He had a Calvin Parker accent. I don't know if that's Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. I kind of lose track, but he had that very thick Southern accent.
Yeah.
And my bed was near the head of my bed was near the door, and he had one hand against the door so no one could walk in without him knowing about it. And he got down right next to my ear, and he said, "Son, I know, and you know, you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something when you're out there." And I didn't answer him. And I didn't know how to answer him. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about." And he said, "All I want to know is how many pictures of it did you take?" And you know what I did? I blurted out without thinking. I blurted out, "I never took a single picture, sir." And he just smiled because he just had an admission from me that I saw what he saw. I knew, he knew, we both knew. So he was satisfied with that answer. And just walked out, went away. And 6 weeks later, they took me down to OSI headquarters, and I was in an interrogation room, a regular interrogation room, with these two agents, plus this guy that joined us, who was a hypnotherapist of some kind. He was in uniform. He had a blue shirt. He had on oak leaves, but he didn't wear any ribbons, and he didn't have a name tag on, and that's very odd. And he walked into the room, and he had a little, like a shaving pouch under his arm. And this guy carried himself. He didn't carry himself like a military officer. He carried himself like a priest or a therapist or something. And he walks in, he puts his little pouch down, and he's like, "Sergeant Lovelace, it's so nice to finally meet you." And he shook my hand, and he said, "Sergeant Lovelace, just for today, would you call me Brad? That is my name." And I thought, that's kind of spooky, but I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, No, don't you mean yes, Brad?" And I said, "Yes, Brad." And he said, "And Terry, just for purposes of today's little exercise, may I call you Terry? That is your name." And I'm like, "Sure, Brad." And then we started this conversation, and we started talking about St. Louis. And he rattles off some landmarks and some restaurants. And I'm sitting back, and I'm realizing I'm getting comfortable with this guy.
Interesting.
And my defenses went up. And I think he sensed that my defenses went up. And he said, "Well, Terry, you know, you're going to be hypnotized today. One of the things that I signed when I was back at the hospital, where the major had me sign a stack of papers, was a consent to hypnotic regression, and like maybe with chemical enhancement or something like that. The drug they gave me was called sodium pentothal.
Oh, yes.
And they gave it out like crazy back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And he said, "I'm just going to give you a little shot in your arm." He said, "This will help you relax and help you get more fully under hypnosis and help you recall details, you know, you might not be able to remember." And
I'm assuming you'd never been hypnotized or been given any kind of drug like this in your life up until this point.
I had never been hypnotized in my life, but, you know, I had started studying. There was an extension university on base, and I had taken several psych classes. And like in Psych 101, we covered hypnosis and the fact that, you know, you couldn't hypnotize someone against their will. And I knew that. So the drug I had big concerns about, because when they gave me the drug, it was like, bam, it was, you know, and I have lots of blank points in there that I can't recall. But the hypnosis itself, he took me down a progressive relaxation thing where, you know, "Terry, I want you to picture you're at the top of the stairs, and we're going to go down the basement and look around at some things. I want you to take that first step. Now feel relaxed, calm and relaxed. Take the second step, feeling twice as relaxed." And on and on. And I had this smooth voice like a radio announcer. And in my mind's eye, I'm walking up the stairs. And I decided I don't have to give him 100% of my mind. And it was kind of like a bifurcated thing. And half my mind, I'm going through Beatles songs and lyrics and Rolling Stones. And in the other half, I'm trying to respond to him. Did that work? I don't know. I never felt like I was in a trance or under hypnosis. Did I feel relaxed? Oh, yeah. The sodium pentothal made me relaxed. But sodium pentothal is a short-acting hypnotic. So it goes away pretty quick. 10, 15 minutes, you're done. You're going to need some more. So he asked me, you and Toby went camping, didn't you, Terry? And I said, yes, Brad, we did. And this is after I'm in a supposedly in a trance, and I'm taking this relaxed position with my head kind of down.
Okay.
And he said, my, that must have been fun. And I said, well, it was our first time camping. It was fun. And he said, and you and Toby saw some funny lights in the sky, didn't you, Terry? And I said, without thinking, I said, yes, Brad. And he said, but they weren't funny lights at all, were they, Terry? Who were they? And this came out of my mouth, and I couldn't believe it came out of my mouth because I didn't formulate this sentence. I said they were the space people. And that was scary for me. That was because I felt like I said that without consciously saying it. So the object of the exercise was, as I thought, he wanted to know, did you tell both of these agents, were you honest with them when you answered their questions? And I said, yes, Brad, because we were careful because, we did wake up feeling bad.
Yes.
And did just wanted to come home. So yes. I could say that in all honesty.
You omitted certain things, but you didn't lie about anything that you said.
Yes. Yeah. And, but I think he knew, or I'm sure he knew. And he said, Terry, this is really important. Did you take any photographs when you were down there? And I said, no, Brad, I left my camera at home. I couldn't have taken a picture if I'd wanted to. Now, interestingly, Toby had a camera in his backpack, which was within his reach. And neither one of us had the presence of mind to take a picture of this thing. And I got a lot of emails from people saying, boy, this is what I saw. But by the time I got my phone out of my pocket, it was gone. Yeah. Or I never thought to take my phone out and take a picture.
You're having an experience. Your first instinct is not necessarily to record it for posterity.
That's right.
It's happening.
Yes. So I told him, no, I don't have any, didn't take a single picture. And boy, I wish I had. Wouldn't that have been great? I could have sold it to National Enquirer or somebody. And
you wouldn't be talking to the likes of me right now.
Well, I wouldn't be in Dallas. I might be talking to you, but not from Dallas. There's nothing wrong with Dallas. So, and he brought me back up and out of the trance, and the agents were satisfied that I wasn't hiding anything. And the major said, I think we can close your file now. And he said, he knew I wasn't going to re-enlist. He said, because I was a very straight kid. I wasn't, in trouble in any kind of way. He said, keep your nose clean and get out of the military and go to college. That's what you want to do. And I'm like, yes, sir, I will. And that was it. So that part of it kind of closed at that end. That was the end of that. And they put me to work. I went back to work in an emergency room. I was on day shift. Toby was in Japan. And no one ever asked me, hey, how was your camping trip? And everybody in that hospital squadron knew we were going camping that weekend. But nobody ever said one word about it.
Wow. Interesting.
So I finished in 1979 and got out of the military and finished school and went to law school.
Once you were back in school and a civilian again, did there come a time when you were aware that you were taken or having a contact experience?
My next contact wasn't until 1987.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1987, I had an episode of lost time on a motorcycle ride.
Whoa.
And I got up, And my wife, I've been married almost 50 years. My wife had her one and only experience that night.
Oh my.
The evening before I went on the motorcycle ride. She woke up. I wasn't in bed. And she said something just felt odd. And at the end of the bed, silhouetted against the window that's behind, was a silhouette of a hooded figure that she perceived as being feminine. And she said, this thing spoke to me, but never moved its lips. I heard her in my head with crystal clarity. And she told me, everything's okay. Go back to sleep. Wow. And she said, that's what I did. I went back to sleep. But she's not had an experience since that. And then that following day, I went on my motorcycle ride, and there were some rural areas that I'd like to go to. You know, Sunday morning, everybody's in church, you're still asleep. I could get up and go for a ride and have the pavement to myself. And I saw motorcycles as recreation. I think if you rely on them as transportation, you're going to get hurt. But if you just ride them recreationally, and I don't anymore. But so I went on. It was a beautiful day. It was autumn. I really only rode the motorcycle about 3 months out of the year, and I was on this ride and a course that I'd been through many times. I knew where I was. I knew where I was going, and I never took my bike off a blacktop and onto gravel. I thought, number one, it's dangerous, and number two, I don't want to chip my paint, so I'll stay on the pavement. Thank you very much. So I'm coming up on a curve, and I'm throttling back from about 80 down to about 65 is where I was headed. And then suddenly it's like I blinked, and I'm on a gravel road doing 35 miles an hour. And I thought, what the hell? How am I here? And, you know, I pulled the motorcycle over and put down the kickstand and got off the bike and looked around. And I blamed it as being absent-minded, just being absorbed in thought. I thought I must have made a mistake. But I ended up missing about 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And my poor wife was just beside herself because she had no idea. You know, days before cell phones, you know, she was just to the point where she was going to call the state police and report me as missing. Sure. When I rolled up home. And I thought everything was fine. So I roll up and my wife's in hysterics and crying. And
oh my gosh.
And I said, what are you talking about? It's 10 o'clock probably. And I had on these leather gloves. I couldn't see my watch. But I went in the house, I heard Nickelodeon downstairs on the TV. The kids were watching, and I knew it wasn't 10 o'clock. And I was I couldn't believe that it was noon, but it was.
Terry, early on in your marriage, did you think about, I really want my wife, who I'm going to be sharing my life with, to know about this part of my life and discuss it or not?
You know, we discussed it from day one. When I got back from the camping trip, I was hurt. I was scared, and I shared every bit of that with her.
Good for you.
And everything that's happened since. And I credit, you know, her support for making it through, you know, through these periods of tough time, because not everyone comes out of this, you know, not harmed. Some
That's
people.
Right.
And I think it's collateral damage. I don't think these things intend to hurt us. But I think we're more fragile up here than they know we are. And I think people can have encounters and walk away with, you know, PTSD or something. I know that I have PTSD about a couple weird things. I can't walk across an open field by myself. I won't walk across an open. I'll walk 1.5 miles to go around.
Yeah.
But I won't cut across an open field. I'll have a panic attack.
Classic. And of all the non-threatening environments in most people's minds. But this is a very strong pattern, one of quite a number of points for people whose lives intersect the kind of experiences that your life has been woven through with. I want to ask you, before we begin to go into an entirely different subject, at this point, and I want to give shots of both of the Devil's Den titles. Again, you can read it for yourself. Compelling proof of alien visitation, alleged government involvement, and an alien implant, which are so much more common than most people can even imagine. And again, congratulations. This is number one of any book on Amazon in this genre right now.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear. I appreciate that.
How ironic, isn't it? At the same time, you're doing a service for people who've had these kind of experiences and don't dare come forward, or only keep it within a very tight circle. Being a public person in this area is, it can be very gratifying, and it can be exhausting.
Telling the story was very cathartic for me. It was good for me.
And at a certain point, I think we're all interested in what comes next after this shuffling along this mortal coil for however long we're here, all of us in our own ways. And many of us have a profound interest in this near-death experience phenomena. It's really become more and more mainstream. And was it of particular interest to you before you met these two physicians, these two women?
Not at all.
Whose
life
at all.
You would think, with all the things that have happened to me, you would think I'd have an interest in it because it's another paranormal thing. I've never been fascinated by ghosts. I've always wanted to go on a ghost hunt.
Yes.
But no, this wasn't a topic on my radar. And I think I mentioned I've got over 4,000 emails from people now. But back when I was thinking about writing this near-death experience book, I was sitting on about 2,500. And at that time, I had exactly four people email me who said, I'm a near-death experiencer. Can you see the parallels between a near-death experience and being an abductee? And I had to honestly say no. I'm not sure where we're going with this. And the point that they were trying to make is it's all about consciousness. It's all about an event that happens all between our ears, and the that debate whether consciousness is local, being in my head, in my brain. So when I die, I'm
goes
dead
with you
for good. Or is consciousness non-local, residing outside the mind?
Which we have more.
I was blown away when I heard these people's stories.
Can you take us back to the first time that you did hear the story of these two women? Because it caused a U-turn in your life.
It did. The one that I refer to as Susie, she asked me not to use her real name, and I respect that. And she's a physician. She's a pediatrician. She works for a major hospital in the Midwest, a hospital that's founded on the tenets of a certain religion. And she's afraid that this would go against doctrine and it might not be popular. And she's got a lot going on in her life, as a lot of people do at age 50, it seems like. So we emailed back and forth, and I'm like, I really would like to write a book with you, but I'd like you to co-author it with me. And she at first agreed to that, and then decided, no, I don't want to do that. I said, well, I can't write this without your input. So we started talking on a telephone. And I asked her, I said, in a nutshell, tell me about your near-death experience. And she was 14 years old. Her parents were both physicians, and she lived in this upscale community that had a nice swimming pool. And she was there with her friend Mary, and they were just going to swim. It was late August, and she goes, she sits down, she and her friend watch people die for a while. Then she says to her friend, I got to pee, I got to go to the bathroom, I'll be right back. So she has her headphones on and her Sony Walkman in her hand and her sunglasses on.
Oh, no.
So she's concerned, she wants to look good. And then, she's checking out other people. And the things that a 14-year-old girl would do. And she's walking right at the edge of the deep end of the pool. And this girl that she didn't get along with, they kind of had a beef, and I think it was racially motivated, but didn't like her. And they had been at odds since grade school. And this girl rushed up to her and with her open palm hit her on the side of the arm and shoved her. And she hadn't been in the pool yet that day. So the water felt ice cold. And she wasn't prepared for that. And somehow she opened her mouth and gasped and inhaled a bunch of water. But, you hear people that have events like this, they talk about how things go in slow motion. That's exactly what she said. She said this happened, time slowed down, and she remembers being in midair. And the title of this book, and this is going to sound made up, but I tell you, it's the truth. She was listening to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' song Free Fall. Or Free Falling. How crazy is that?
Whoa.
So she said she was in this terrible panic and in a lot of pain, and she didn't even know which way was up. Having trouble getting oriented. And she had this terrible panic, like, I'm going to die. And she heard a feminine voice in her head say, just let go, Susie. And she thought, like hell. And then she did. And she just let go. And the moment she did, she popped out of her body and was at a vantage point above the pool. And could see everything that was going on. And she watched her body being dragged out of the pool and onto the cement, and a lifeguard, and there happened to be a medical doctor there with his kids at the swimming pool. So there was a medical doctor there to give her CPR, did the chest compressions, and the lifeguard was doing the mouth-to-mouth, and the ambulance was coming, and she watched all of this. And almost with disinterest. It wasn't, you would think, oh my God, I'm going to die. No, she said that wasn't a concern whatsoever. She was interested in what's going on, but not concerned. She said, I knew I was going to be okay. And she grew up in a family that they were practicing Buddhist, and she would go to a temple every now and then. But she wasn't Buddhism wasn't that religious anchor, that Christianity is for a lot of other people in the United States. But she had some grounding. She felt grounded in this. And she, on top of the ambulance, it was a white ambulance. On top of the ambulance, there was a Arabic numeral 7, about 6 foot tall, painted in red paint on this white ambulance on the very top. Now, the ambulance is 10 foot tall. You're not going to see it unless you're above it. And she got transported to the hospital, and they revived her at the hospital with they shocked her 3 times with a defibrillator, and her heart started. Now, she was sick. She had pneumonia from inhaling all that nasty pool water. And she wanted to kind of downplay that because it was just, that was a bad time. But after she saw the ambulance pull away, she didn't go through a tunnel of light, but she went through a dark space and saw a pinpoint of light. And she said, I felt compelled to go to the pinpoint of light. And she said, the closer I got, the bigger it got. She said that it radiated warmth and comfort and love, and everything you can think of that's good was in this light. And the white light finally engulfed her, and she found herself in a semi-tropical setting. And there was grass, everything was manicured, beautiful flowers. She said it was just absolutely gorgeous place. And she said some things that are just hard for us to process, never having had the experience. Right. You know, she said she felt a oneness with the plants and other living things. And she said there was bright sunlight, but there was no sun. The light just radiated out of the sky. And then she notices there is a Buddhist monk in red robes. And there's a koi pond there, you know, with fish in it. And there's a bench there. And she and this monk walk over and sit down. And they have a long discussion. Now, it seemed to her like she was there what would have had to have been days. Her father was murdered when she was 6 years old. This was about the time that ATMs became a thing. And he was coming home from work, stopped at the ATM, and was robbed and shot. So she and her father were very close. And there was a line of like fog, a line of separation. And she said, I knew that if I went to the other side of that fog, I wouldn't be able to come back. And out of the fog stepped her dad.
Oh my.
And she got very emotional on the phone. She said, I cried. I was just so glad to see him. And she said, we didn't have physical bodies, but we embraced. And she said that her dad looked younger and looked better than he'd ever looked before. He was dressed as he liked on the weekends in the golf attire, with his golf shoes she recognized from being a little girl. And I thought it was an odd comment, but she said he even smelled like my daddy. And I thought, wow, that's pretty strong. And you know, they exchanged I love yous, and he said to her, but Susie, you have to go back. And she said, I want to stay here. None of these 4 people that had this experience were eager at all to go back. They wanted to stay right where they were, even though they were dead. They wanted to stay there. So the monk, Daddy steps back into the fog, and the monk and her start talking. And she said that the monk answered all of her questions and then told her, but you know, you won't remember most of this when you get back. But he said, you have to go back because you have more work to do. And he said, that's the reason we're here. We're here to do work. And he showed her mental imagery of 2 babies. And he said, you're going to have 2 children. And if you don't go back, you won't. And that convinced her that she wanted to go back. She would go back voluntarily. And then there was a lot of other things that happened, but that's the gist of it. And she popped back into her body, and she was in the emergency room above her body looking down. And she said she was terrified of going back in her body because her body was broken, and it looked terrible. It didn't look like a place she wanted to be. But in an instant, she was sucked in through the top of her head, and immediately she took a gasp of air, and she was back.
Terry, it's such a tangent, and it is small-minded on a certain level in the great cosmic scheme of things. Did there ever come a time when the girl that pushed her in acknowledge this, or she just disappears from the picture? It's not a crucial detail. I'm just curious.
That's a good question. No, but she was arrested and prosecuted.
Wow.
She was. They went to the same high school, but when she went back to school at the end of summer, Melinda wasn't there. So she went to another school, and I asked her. I said, "Surely you've seen her, at the supermarket or something." She said, "Yeah, I've seen her once or twice at the mall." She said, "We just ignore one another."
Sure. Jumping in as devil's advocate as opposed to devil's den, and I do this with the utmost respect. Now that this is a subject that you have studied deeply, that you have an innate sense of as much as anyone that has never had the experience, do you feel there's a possibility when we are in a life and death situation and we're kind of caught between those two worlds bioenergetically or biologically or physically because of, what's happened, that this is a scenario driven by the mind's desire based on every myth, religious idea, legend, lore, trusted tradition that we hope is true, and that we simply inform ourselves of it and fill ourselves with goodness as we are about to die, as opposed to, my gosh, this is all really happening?
I went down that road because I had the fear that maybe none of this is real. Maybe all of this is a construct in my mind. It could be. And, it couldn't have been drugs for Susie because they hadn't given her any drugs. I did a lot of reading, and I watched a guy named Sam Parnia, Parnia, who's a MD, PhD, and he is in resuscitative medicine. He works in medicine that deals with bringing people back. And he said these are not, his words are, these experiences of death, they're not from hallucinations, delusions, illusions, dreams, or CPR-induced consciousness. These lucid experiences cannot be a trick of a disordered or dying brain, but rather a unique human experiences that emerges at death.
Yeah.
And, there have been several really well-known, they're well-known now, physicians. There's one I didn't know about. His name is Eben Alexander. And he was a neurosurgeon who taught neurosurgery at Harvard. So we're talking about a smart guy. In his experience, he has a book out. I can't think of the name of it, but it's an excellent book. He picked up a bug that gives you meningitis. It was a bug that he picked up, wasn't sure where, swimming, who knows. But he picked up this bug that can get past the brain's barrier and infect the brain. So he had this incredibly bad case of meningitis. And they gave him like a 2% chance of living.
I was going to say, it's usually a killer.
And he was on life support, and the family was discussing taking him off life support because everyone had given up. But in the meanwhile, he told me that he was conscious that he was in a dark place, floating. He didn't feel like he had a physical body. And it was just darkness all around him. And he had the thought, is this going to be eternity for me, or is this just temporary? Or and then, just like Susie, there was the pinpoint of light, and he had an amazing experience. But I wanted to say real quick, when he had this experience, he was an adopted child, so he didn't know his birth family or his siblings.
Okay.
When he was on the other side, he met a pretty blonde woman, and he knew that they were related somehow. When he recovered from this, he wanted to meet, for the first time, he wanted to meet his birth parents. So he made arrangements and got that done. So they went over there, he and his wife went over there for dinner. And of course, they had to pull out all the family albums. And he saw her, before they even got into the family albums, her picture was on the wall. And he said, that's the girl. That's the girl that I met on the other side. And the mother said, that's your sister. She died 4 years ago.
Oh.
That's pretty amazing stuff.
That's very amazing stuff. If there weren't such a well-developed, well-researched, swear on your life database of such experiences that continue to grow, of people being more and more public about them. I wonder if you can talk a bit about the other physician, the other woman whose experience you documented, who was technically without heartbeat for a considerably longer time.
Well, this woman I refer to as Virginia, and she's a radiologist, and she's in the New York area, so up where you are. And she was 19 years old, was just starting undergrad in microbiology chemistry, because she wanted to be a physician. And she was in a car. She was in the front passenger seat. And they had a mutual friend who was driving the car, and her boyfriend was in the back seat. And they'd been to a party and they'd had some drinks, and he didn't want to drive. She said she had no more than one or two, and swears that she was sober, and I believe her. They were in a BMW and got into some kind of crossover accident head on, and she has no memory of the crash whatsoever.
Good.
But it's like the crash happens, she opened her eyes, she knew something terrible had happened, and she had no pain, no physical pain. And the deflated airbag was on her chest, and she was kind of slouched forward, and she suffered horrific injuries. She had a shattered pelvis, a shattered femur, broken ribs, concussion. You know, she was really had horrific injuries. And her boyfriend, and the driver rose up, and she said, we were above the scene looking down.
All three of them.
All three of them.
Wow.
And they could see. I said, well, you know, how's the roof of the car? How are you going to see inside the car? She says, I don't know, but we could see inside the car. We could see ourselves. And she said that they weren't in any distress whatsoever, that this felt like a normal thing to do. And I thought it was odd. She said, I felt like I'd been on this journey once before, maybe twice. And she said that they all held hands, three of them held hands, and were rising up through this blackness. They didn't get to the point of light yet, but she was told she had to go back. So her friends said goodbye and expressed their love for her. And the next thing she knew, she was in this shattered body in a lot of pain. And they came, and EMT guys were there and took her out and took her to the hospital, and she survived all those injuries.
And they didn't.
But she says, and now she didn't have the kind of in-depth NDE like Susie had, but it was absolutely a transformative event for her life. And for instance, she said that, she's kind of she called herself a classic rock kind of girl. She's in her early 60s. She never had an interest in classical music. When she got back, she developed an interest in the Spanish guitar and took classes. And she said it was a breeze. She could play it like, it was work, but it wasn't what she was expecting. And she made beautiful music, still plays to this day. And this musical ability was something new. And she says it's a gift. It's one of the gifts that they gave me.
What's another gift?
Psychic ability, the ability to communicate with the dead sometimes. All four people talk about, there are three women and one man. The gentleman in the group doesn't like to be called a psychic, doesn't like the word psychic, but he says that his intuition is through the roof, that sometimes he'll make a guess about something or have a feeling, and he's right most of the time. Now, he does say that in his event, he was actually on an operating table having heart surgery, and he coded, and his heart stopped. So, but he was in good hands. They've, got his heart restarted, but he had this whole experience that was in depth.
Looking down on the OR?
Oh yeah, that he saw that. He went through what he called a tunnel, which was different from Susie or Virginia. Traveled in a tunnel and found himself in a meadow with beautiful flowers and trees, and he met a grandparent, but not the grandparents that he knew as a kid. He met a great-grandparent he'd never met, was there to welcome him. And one of the first things he did when he got out of the hospital and went back home was, I want to see the pictures. I want to see. And sure enough, that was the guy. And he said, there's not a doubt in my mind that he was the one that welcomed me. And like the others, he was told, you're not done yet. You got to go back. So that's kind of an interesting revelation. We have a purpose here.
You spent a good part of your career as a trial lawyer.
Yes.
You're a pragmatist. You're a realist. You're a grounded person in the three-dimensional world. You trained in the law about as nuts and bolts and real world a world as we can enter into. What has been the impact on your life of completely separate from the other intelligence contacts? And we can talk a bit about what connects these things even in the abstract. What's been the impact on you from doing this work and knowing, as well as any of us can know, that accounts like those from Virginia and Susie and this gentleman, which are, of course, just, scratching the surface of such accounts by credible people. What's been the impact on your life?
It was a pretty big impact. I got to say, it was a pretty big revelation for me. I went to, when Dr. Raymond Moody wrote his book, Life After Life, in 1973, which Susie insisted that I read before I tackled this book. And he co-founded an organization called IONS, the Institute for Near-Death Studies. It's IANDS.org. And they have a bazillion tube videos. And they have all kinds of credible people who've had this experience and every facet of it. And they tell their stories. And I went and then there's NDERF, near-death experience. That's Dr. Jeffrey Long's, wish I could think of that. It's I can't think of the name of it. NDERF is how it's pronounced. And it is collection of stories, like 5,000 of them. And I read a few hundred. People that had near-death experiences. And I looked at, I read all these and came away with the feeling that, these people in China, in Japan, in South Africa, in Paris, they're all having the same event, and some people will see Jesus, some people will see great grandma, some people will see an all-knowing orb of light. But all of them have this experience, and all of them, without fail, say that it has been a profoundly transformative event in their life. It changed the way they look at the world and the universe.
As you're speaking, I'm substituting certain words in my mind and smiling to myself of seeing a light in the sky, watching this kind of movement, having this presence in my bedroom. At a certain point, it's almost like there are aspects that are interchangeable about these two extraordinarily different, non-standard human experiences. And if you have some contact with or privy to both, or study, one may take you into the other. We're really, we're having our own missing time experience. We're coming into the end of our 2 hours right now. Any thoughts? Will you, first of all, before I say anything, will you come back and join us again?
I sure will.
Any special thoughts you'd like to close on?
Just that I know that there are people out there that are very skeptical, and that's a healthy thing.
Sure.
And I don't discourage that. And I want to be clear, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to tell you my story. And you're welcome to accept it or not. It's okay. But do a little research. There's so much more to this world than we know, than we can see and feel and touch.
Very true. And it continues on. I'm thinking as we close of the 6 blind men and the elephant, and one holds the leg, one is talking about the ear, the other is describing the elephant as defined by the tusk. The tail really is everything. The body. Yes, sometimes we need to rise above the room and look down on it to get our perspective. Terry Lovelace, it's been a real pleasure. I look forward to our next get-together. And this is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. Stay well, fight for what you believe in, and be kind to each other when possible. See you next week.
Good advice. Good night.